So let's start with question number 1. You're given a mathematical expression or equation اللي هي موجودة up there, and we told you, or I told you before, إن أي mathematical expression كده, the most important thing to learn is the meaning of every single letter in this form. So you'll start reading. It says the equation above relates the number of minutes x. So I understand now that x is the number of minutes. Maria spends running each day, and the number of minutes y. So y is the number of minutes, but of what? She spends biking each day. So x is the running and y is the biking. In the equation, what does the number 75 represent? So if this is the number of minutes hiking, running, and this is the number of minutes biking, if added to each other they gave me 75, then this means that the total number of minutes spent running and biking each day is 75, which is C. Makes sense, huh? So nothing to solve except best understanding. Once you go through number 2, don't forget, raise your hand or sign if you don't understand anything, please. So when you work on number 2, it's just a mathematical expression, and they're asking what's equivalent, يعني equal. So كده whenever I see a number before a bracket, it means it's multiplied, so I'll distribute it, and that would give me 3x plus 15, and then the minus 6. Like terms together, the 15 and the minus 6, then this would get me 3x plus 9 as the final answer. Look at the choices, and it's still choice C as well. Makes sense? We're good? Moving on to number 3. This is clearly a system of equations because there are 2 equations and both of them have x and y. They're asking me to find the solution, the ordered path that satisfies the system. So how do I find the solution? I either going to do substitution or elimination. Or if I'm allowed the calculator, I can do the mode 5-1 thing. But if I'm going to do the mode 5-1, I need to make sure that it's ordered the right way. يعني I'll move the y to this side عشان تبقى ال x وال y on the same side. Now I'll have this as x over 2 plus 2y equals 6. So both are organized in the same way. When we're entering the numbers on the calculator, it should be 1, and then -1, and then -3. As for this, the coefficient of x here is supposed to be half, 1 over 2. And this one is supposed to be 2, and this one is supposed to be 6. Once you do this on a calculator, as I said, mode 5-1, it should get you the values of x and y. This is the calculator method. The non-calculator method, I will need to make either the x's or the y's with the same y value. Sorry, x's or the y with the same coefficient. So I'll multiply اللي تحت دي by 2. If I multiplied كل اللي تحت دي هنا by 2, both of those equations will have x with a coefficient of 1. So I can start now subtracting عشان eliminate ال x مع ال x. Negative y minus 4y is negative 5y. Negative 3 minus 12 is negative 15, which will give me y equals positive 3. كده there's no need to get the x لأنه ما فيش غير question point واحدة بس اللي ليها ال y coordinate ب 3. So it's definitely B. So كده 2 methods we've discussed. Third method is to try the points out. So substitute with those points. يعني احط الاكس بنيجاتيف 3 والواي بزيرو واشوف الايكويشن هتطلع صح ولا غلط. So for example هجرب في الايكويشن اللي فوق مكان الاكس نيجاتيف 3 مكان الواي هحط 0 and minus 3. ده هتبقى negative 3 equals negative 3 which is true. Then I have to try في الايكويشن الثانيه برضو and it has to be true as well. So negative 3 over 2 plus 2 times 0, is it equals to 6 or not? Once you calculate this, it will get me negative 3 over 2 equals 6. Is this true? No, it's not. So it doesn't satisfy. So option A is incorrect. You'll try B and you'll find the 2x for both. طبعا trying out the choices, I believe, is the last resort. It's the option when you don't know what to do. This is your last option to try out. Okay? moving on to number 4. Complex numbers are basically the numbers that has a real number and an imaginary number. يعني for example, something that looks like this: 4 plus 3i. This part is called the real part. This is the real number, not red, real. And this one is the imaginary part. This is the imaginary number. Why is it called an imaginary number? Because it has an I, and that I represents root -1, which is an undefined thing. يعني on a calculator, it would give me a math error. We never ever substitute the I with root -1, ever. What we need to learn is how to add complex numbers, how to subtract them, how to multiply them, and how to divide them. And they start with the easy and they end with the hard one. The easiest is addition. The subtraction is a tiny bit more in steps. Multiplication is a bit more, and then division is the longest and the hardest. So we're starting with an example of the addition. Let's say we have 4 plus 3i added to -2 plus 4i. When we add, we simply add like terms together. In 4 with the -2, which would come 2, and then the 3i plus the 4i, which is positive 7i. This is your final answer. That's it. When we subtract, yes, yeah. The addition part. صح? So again, a complex number is just a number that has 2 parts in it. This is what we call altogether a complex number. The complex number consists of 2 parts. One is a real number and one is an imaginary number. An imaginary number is any number that has the letter I in it. The letter I represents root of a negative number. يعني, what does that still mean? يعني, for example, the root of -9, when you do it on a calculator, it's math error. Yet, we can imagine that if it was to be calculated, the answer should be 3, but we put an I next to it so that everyone in the world understands that this is an imaginary number. It was originally a negative number under the root. Does that make sense? Type. We just simply need to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide the complex numbers. If we're adding, we're just going to add the like terms together. So that's what I did. The numbers with each other, the real ones, the imaginary ones with each other. And I simply added them. 4 plus -2 became +2, and then 3 plus 4 became 7i. But when we're subtracting, the same goes for any brackets or any 2 brackets with a subtraction sign in the middle. The first thing we do is to distribute this negative sign. So the first bracket will remain with the same sign, but without the brackets anymore. And then the second bracket, instead of +4, it will become -4. Instead of +2i, it would become -2i. So I switched the signs in the second bracket, not the first one. And then I still add like terms together. So the 2 with the -4, which is -2, and then the -3 minus the 2, that's -5i. That's your final answer. Is this clear? Now focus on these بقى قوي. Now in the multiplication, let's say we have 2 برضو minus 3i, and then now multiplied by 4 plus 2i. When we're multiplying any 2 brackets, we still have to distribute. So the 2 will be multiplied by the 4 and will be multiplied by the 2i. 2 times 4 is just 8. 2 times 2i is 4i. Then -3i times 4, which is -12i. -3i times 2i, which is -6i to the power of 2, because I times I is I power 2. Now this is the only difference between the I and the x's, is that the I to the power of 2, whenever we have I to the power of 2, we will cross it out and instead substitute -1 instead of the I. So we'll remove entirely the I power 2 ونحط مكانها -1, which means this will be crossed out and Instead, it would become -6 times -1. يعني in other words, we switch the sign right before the I squared. Because this will remain as 8, and this will remain as 4i, and this is -12i. But now, -6 times -1 is +6. Now, I'll still add like terms together. So the 8 plus the 6, this is 14. And then the 4i minus 12i, that's -8i. This is your final answer. Does this make sense? Okay. Finally, the hardest among them all, which is the division. So when we divide complex numbers, let's say we have 2 minus 3i, and then over 4 minus 2i, for example. This is the question. So we're dividing these two. What we do is the following. We take only the denominator. So next to this fraction, we're going to multiply it by a new fraction. What does this new fraction consist of? It consists of these two, 4 minus 2i, but with the opposite sign. So it becomes 4 plus 2i. The opposite middle sign. Not the opposite of both terms. بس الساين اللي في النص بدل ما كانت ماينس اخليها بلس، لو كانت بلس هخليها ماينس في الدينومينيتور بس، وهعيد ده فوق وتحت. So 4 plus 2i up and down. Does this step make sense? Perfect. طيب, what happens next? We start multiplying. When we multiply simply just how we learned up in the previous question. We distribute 2 times 4, 2 times 2. That would become 8 plus 4i. And then -3 times 4, -12i. -3 times 2, that's -6i to the power of 2. Over. Now, اللي تحت اللي هم زي بعض دول الاثنين, there's a quick way to do the multiplication for those two. لأن دول زي بعض بالظبط. The only difference is in the middle sign. So there's a shortcut that we can do to organize this a bit. What is that shortcut? We multiply 4 times 4, which becomes 16, and then 4 times 2, which becomes 8i. 2i, -2i, sorry, times 4, that's -8i. -2i times 2i, that's -4i squared. Again, sorry, this is the longer way. But what is that shorter way? Is to take the first number, اللي هو 4, to the power of 2. Take the second number, اللي هو 2i, to the power of 2, and always put a negative sign in between. Does this make sense? طيب, so it's either ان احنا نعمل ال long multiplication which would get me ال upper result, او ال other way ان انا اعمل اللي تحت. اللي تحت is much shorter, لان كده كده ال 8i minus ال 8i اللي في النص will cross each other out. So it's better ان انا اخد الاولاني اهو, الرقم الاولاني منهم to the power of 2, الرقم الثاني to the power of 2, and it's always minus in between. طيب, then the next thing is اللي فوق we're going to change أي I power 2 ل -1 زي ما اتعلمنا. So it will become 8 plus 4i minus 12i, وبعدين plus 6 بدل minus 6 عشان هشيل I power 2 واحط مكانها -1. للدينومينيتور هعمل ال 16 بس بدل ما هي minus 4 هتبقى plus 4, لأن هشيل برضه ال I power 2 لتحت واحط مكانها -1. Then I'll add like terms together. 8 plus the 6, that's 14. 4i minus 12i, that's -8i. Over اللي تحت 16 plus 4, that's 20. Unfortunately, احنا لسه ما خلصناش لأن this should be split into 2 parts. 14 over 20 minus 8i over 20. So ادي 14 over 20 and then minus 8i over 20. It seems ان انا ينفع اعمل simplification اكتر من كده. يعني 14 over 20 على الكالكوليتر هتطلع لي 7 over 10. ونيجاتيف 8i over 20 هتطلع لي 2i over 5 لما اكتب 8 over 20 بس. And this should be the final answer. So the steps are as follows. أول حاجة we take only the denominator and we change the middle sign and we write it up and down. We then start multiplying normally. بعدين أي I power 2 هشيلها وأحط مكانها negative 1. Once that happens هيبقى عندي fraction في رقمين فوق أو واحد فوق وتحت واحد بس. دايما واحد بس تحت. So بقسمهم if possible. Both terms اللي فوق will be divided by الرقم اللي تحت. 14 over 20 and negative I 8i over 20. Simplify whenever possible. أي حاجة ينفع أعمل لها simplification دايما في الماث أعمل لها simplification. So that's how you get your final answer. Is there any questions? طيب معلش. Going back to this one, this is a pretty easy one. أول حاجة ألاقي negative sign قبل البراكت، so كده كده بدخل النيجاتيف sign دي جوه. هيبقى عندي 5 plus 12i minus 9i power 2 وبعدين plus 6i. قلنا أي i power 2 هنشيلها ونحط مكانها negative 1. So this is what will happen. Now هيبقى عندي ال 5 plus 12i بعدين بدل negative 9 تبقى positive 9 وبعدين the 6i as it is. Like terms together 5 and 9 will become 14, 12i and 6i will become 18i. Both are positive, which means D is the correct answer. Any issues? Moving on to number 5. f of بطيخ بنشيل الاكس ونحط بطيخ. So when we say f of negative 1 المفروض اروح للفانكشن اللي اسمها f اشيل الاكس بتاعتها واحط مكانها negative 1. So negative 1 to the power of 2 minus 6 times negative 1 plus 3 and all of this is then over negative 1 minus 1. On a calculator على طول it would become 1 plus 6 plus 3 which is 10 over negative 2, so that's negative 5 as the answer. A. One of the very easy ones in the whole test. Once we work on number 16, that's where it becomes with no specific rule solved. It could be solved with reasoning. It says a company that makes wildlife videos purchases camera equipment for $32,400. So $32,400. The equipment depreciates. The word depreciates is a very important word. It's either pronounced depreciates or depreciates, whatever you prefer. Anyway, it means decreases in value. So the price of anything except مثلا gold, anything usable it depreciates in value. If you bought a car, it should depreciate in value by the time you use it. Anyway, so it says it depreciates in value at a constant rate for 12 years, after which it is considered to have no monetary value. يعني بعد 12 سنة it will be zero, it will be nothing. It will cost zero. بس كمان مش so what does that mean? It means that this price or this amount of 32,400 will keep decreasing at the same rate for 12 years. After then it will become worth nothing, zero. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to split this 32,400 on 12 years to know exactly the amount that it should depreciate each year. Does this make sense? Okay, so on a calculator بقى عشان ننجزها 32,400 divided by 12, that's 2,700. So it decreases 2,700 per year. It's asking for what would be the price of this camera equipment 4 years after it's purchased. So now I'm going to multiply the 4, because it's depreciating for 4 years, multiplied by 2,700. And that should get me 10,800. This is the amount it depreciates in 4 years. So it's not the value. It's the amount اللي بننقصه during the 4 years. So I have to do now 32,400 minus the 2,700. So 32,400 minus, sorry, not 2,700, minus 10,800, which is the value it should depreciate in 4 years. That's 21,600. So C is the correct answer. Does this make sense? Is there any other way to do this? Yes, definitely. There are lots of other ways. The simplest one is to try and understand it because it makes sense when you do that. Now, because we understand that this money is going to be zero after 12 years, that's how we understood we can divide the 32,400 on 12 and understand that the 2,700 is basically the amount it decreases every year. So in 4 years, I'll know exactly what's the amount that will decrease, and accordingly, I'll remove that amount from the 32,400 that I got at the beginning. Simple. Number 7. Number 7 is at the beginning, it's a quadratic expression, and it should be solved using quadratic functions. It's one of the easiest way to do it is to solve it using quadratic functions, but also it could be solved uh, by algebra, by expansion شوية. It would take much longer if you do it algebraically. But if you don't know how to do the other way, then why not? So we will do the longer way الأول, and then we'll discuss the part that has to do with the quadratics because we'll have a specific class for the quadratics later. Anyway, so they're asking you which of those is equivalent to this and so on. What I would think of is ان انا expand every one of those, اكبره. So how do I expand any bracket that has two terms and the bracket is to the power of 2? لازم اعمل اول واحده power 2، بعدين leave some space، بعدين تاني واحده power 2، بعدين الاثنين دول times بعض times 2 في النص 2ab. So انا هنا لما احب اعمل expansion x plus 3 all to the power of 2 will become x power 2، بعدين leave space 3 power 2 which is 9. In the middle it's x times 3 times 2 which is 6x, and then plus the 5. Well, then, because there are like terms, the 9 and the 5, it should be added up. So the final answer is x squared plus 6x plus 14, which is not equivalent. So definitely A is not right. We should then try B. When you expand, it becomes x squared plus 6x bardo plus 9, and then now minus the 5. When you add those like terms, it would get you x squared plus 6x and then plus 4, which is the correct one. So B is the final answer. Does this make sense? We're good. Focus بقى قوي في الحته اللي هقولها. Yes يا قمر قول. Yes, of course. When we expand any bracket عامة that has a power of 2 and that bracket has two terms inside, we should put the first one to the power of 2, the second one power 2, and then we multiply them and times 2 in the middle. An example, if you have, let's say, x plus 4 all to the power of 2, you should do the first one power 2, which is x squared, and then the second one power 2, which is 16. And in the middle, you should multiply x times 4 times 2, which is 8x. That's what we're going to do in every one of those choices until we get something that's similar to this or equivalent to this. So when we expand the first choice, we got at the end 9 plus 5, which got me positive 14, and that's not the correct equation. But in the second one, when we had this 9 minus the 5, it gave me positive 4, which means that this whole thing is now equivalent to this whole thing. Makes better sense شوية Lulu? There's one other method, which is the beginning of the quadratics, as I was saying. So generally, if you remember, we said in the linear functions that we have forms that go like this: y equals mx plus b, ax plus by equals c, and the third one, which is y minus y1 equals m bracket x minus x1. Now, the quadratics is very similar in the ideas or in how it's taught, but it represents a different thing. All of those represents lines. and the line is either going up or going down. But the quadratics is all the functions that represents something called a parabola, which is this U shape that either looks up or looks down. Now, the quadratics is any equation that has x to the power of 2 in it. So there are forms as well, which is ax squared plus bx plus c, which is the standard form, which is similar to this form here, because it's ax squared plus bx plus c. Or there's another form called the vertex form, plus k not b. This is again called the vertex form. Why is it called the vertex form? Because it shows the vertex. So whenever you find the form has a bracket and a power of 2, this shows the vertex. And the vertex is basically this number inside the bracket, but with the opposite sign. So it's positive h, and this number outside of the bracket with the same sign as it is. For example, if you have an equation that goes -3 bracket x minus 4 all to the power of 2 plus 5, what is the vertex of this equation? It would be positive 4, the number inside with the opposite sign, and positive 5, the number outside with the same sign. The vertex is basically this point here, the peak of this parabola. طيب, and I'll stop here now. I won't discuss the rest of the quadratics. But how does this get to be applied here? When you look at the givens, or the given part up there, that's the standard form. That is this form here. But when you look at the choices, they're all the vertex form. So if I know the vertex, I can tell which one is the correct one. There is a method to calculate the vertex out of the standard form. How to get the vertex from the standard form? You'll get negative b over 2a and then f of negative b over 2a. But what does that mean? It means you will calculate negative b, which is negative 6, over 2 times a, which is 1. That would get you the negative 3. This is the x of the vertex. Now, in order to get the y, you need to calculate f of negative 3. يعني, you remove every x and you substitute negative 3. So negative 3 power 2 plus 6 times negative 3 plus 4. The answer would come out as negative 5. So now I have the y. Negative 3 and negative 5 is the vertex. Because this is the vertex, I know that when it's written in the vertex form, الx بتتحط بعكس الساين. So البوزيتيف 3 هي الصح، والy بتتحط بنفس الساين بره. So النيجاتيف 5 هي اللي صح. So كنت هختار b برضه. So let me represent the whole thing again. There are two methods to solve this. We either expand the equations or the options اللي تحت, the choices, and we figure out which one of them is equal, or we use الفكرة of the vertex. ايه اللي يخليني اصلا افكر في الفيرتكس؟ ان كل الايكويشنز اللي مكتوبة في الchoices are all in the vertex form. So I think على طول of the vertex. And the one that I'm given is not in the vertex form. So what I'm going to do is, if I know the vertex, I know the equation. I will find the vertex من ال standard form اللي هي using negative b over 2a, and that's how I know which would be the correct answer على طول, because the x will be with the opposite sign, but the y with the same sign. Does that make sense? No? كبرت قوي مننا. طب ايه؟ Hello. انتوا كويسين؟ It got a bit complicated. ما هو عشان كده I wanted to start with that. خلاص, if you understand it you'll know how to solve it, because you don't know yet موضوع الفيرتكس. لما نيجي نلعب شويه في موضوع الكوادراتيك فانكشنز ده, هنفتكر انه زي ما مثلا احنا بنتكلم عن لينير بنفكر في سلوب على طول. So اي question لينير ممكن يتحل mentally, بس because we think about it in terms of slope we do it على طول. نفس الكلام هيحصل هنا, ان انا المفروض ان انا دلوقتي لما افهم الفيرتكس كويس قوي او الكوادراتيك فانكشنز كويس قوي, هتبقى اسهل حاجه اعملها ان انا اطلع الفيرتكس. ف in that case ساعتها الفيرتكس you'll see how easy now this thing is. وبيكوز انا شرحت كل الفكره بتاعته, it seemed انها bigger. But what I actually did is basically بالظبط 2 steps. I got negative b over 2a اللي هي this step اللي هنا, this one, and f of negative b over 2a اللي هي negative 3 و negative 5, and منها عرفت على طول ان لازم دي تكون بعكس الساين وده بنفس الساين. ده الاوبشن الوحيد اللي فيه نيجاتيف 3 بدل نيجاتيف 3 بوزيتيف 3 وبدل وزي نيجاتيف 5 بره زي ما هي. عشان كده اخترت بي. اتس فاستر ذان ان انا قاعد اكسباند كل تشويس, لانه لو عندي التشويس الصح كان في دي كان زماني باكسباند 4 choices until I realize مين فيهم الصح. Does this make sense شويه؟ كده I'll explain قصة الكوادراتكس later, بس أنا I want you to get الاستراتيجي ليه أنا شايف إن دي أسهل even though it now looks harder. أوكي؟ طيب أنا عايز بس أقول لكم على حاجة. أنا لما نيجي نشرح كوادراتك هتبقى هي واحدة من أرخم التوبكس اللي موجودة في الألجبرا في الاس اي تي. So I want you to be okay with it شوية. معلش it will take us some time لأن هي رخامة الكوادراتك functions إنه نفس شكل الكويستشن ممكن يطلب منه 10 different things, so you have to understand them. أوي ما ينفعش تتحفظ دي. طيب let's now check question number 8, a weight problem that's a bit harder. It says Ken is working this summer as part of the crew on a farm. He earned $8 per hour for the first 10 hours he worked this week. Because of his performance, his crew leader raised his salary to $10 per hour for the rest of the week. Ken saves 90% of his earnings from each week. What is the least number of hours he must work the rest of the week to save at least $270 for the week? So how do we think about this one? شوية from the back to the beginning, يعني the other way around. Generally, what I need to know is what do they want? They want me to get the number of hours needed to save yes, at least $270. So I'm thinking now, how do I calculate the amount of money I save? So when you go back, you'll realize that he saves 90% of his earnings. So it means that he'll multiply 90% times whatever earnings he get, and that's the amount of money he'll save. طيب, how do I know what are the earnings? When you read برضو the sentence before that, it says that from starting here يعني, it says that he used to earn $8 per hour for the first 10 hours. So he'll multiply, so the earnings is 8 multiplied by 10, which are the first 10 hours. Added to this, every hour bigger than 10, he'll receive $10 for each hour then. يعني $10 multiplied by the number of hours is زيادة عن 10. Let me be very clear about this point because this is a bit confusing, so focus out. For example, if he worked for 12 hours, in order to calculate the amount of money he'll get, I'm supposed to split the 12 hours to 2 parts. The first 10 is calculated in a specific way, and the other 2 is calculated in a different way. But how did I get this 2? Whatever the number of hours is, let's call it h. In order to get the 2, you should subtract from h the first 10 hours. Does that make sense? Again, if h represents the number of hours I've worked, I'm going to calculate the first 10 hours, كده 8 times 10. But the rest of the hours, how do I know how many hours remaining? I'll subtract from h, the number of hours, the first 10. So I'll do h minus 10. This is the number of hours extra, or the number of hours that exceeded the first 10 hours. So I'm supposed to multiply $10 that he receives multiplied by the h minus 10, which is the number of hours he worked extra. All of this should give me $270 at the end. That's what he's trying to get. 90% multiplied by all his earnings. And the earnings are split into 2 parts. The first 10 hours are calculated in a specific way, and then the rest of the hours is calculated in a different way. The first 10 hours, it was just the 8 multiplied by the number of hours, which is 10. Now the second or the rest of the hours, it's 10 multiplied by the rest of the hours, which is h minus 10. All of this should give me 270. Now I'll start solving this equation. Does that make sense شوية ولا لا؟ طيب this is برضو one way يعني بس anyway. طيب if I would like to solve this هعمل ايه؟ I'll move 90% to the other side with division. يبقى عندي 8 times 10 which is 80 plus I'll distribute the 10. I'll have 10h minus 100. All of this is equals to 270 divided 90%. On a calculator, 270 divided 90% is 300. I'll move the 80 and the negative 100 to the other side. So هيبقى عندي هنا minus 80 and plus 100. كل ده equals ل 10h. Then 10h is now equals to 300 minus 80 plus 100, which is 320. I'll move 10 to the other side. That's 32 hours. So if he worked for 32 hours, he'll save exactly $270. He needs to work at least 33 hours to save at least $270. Does that make sense? There's the other method, which is trying out the choices. Yani if I know already that the first 10 hours are calculated multiplied by 8, so I can try. If he worked for 38 hours, بتاع هيخلص صح؟ Yes يا عمر. لا don't لا don't ever ما don't think about كده خالص، مش على طول خالص. يعني بصي مفيش tricks that works always. هو ده اللي انا عايز اقوله. التريكس بتورك، التريكس regarding تفكير. يا عمر معلش بقى قطع. انا كنت بقول لك التريكس ذات ورك، التريكس اللي ليها علاقه بالتفكير، ماثيماتيكال تريكس مش عارف ايه. بس مفيش تريكس ذات وركس على هاو تو سولف ذا تيست بطريقه سريعه. اللي هو بقى مثلا التشويس اللي لو ما عرفتيش مش عارف ايه يبقى التشويس سي، لو مش عارف مين تبقى شبه الانسر. لا this isn't how unfortunately it's done يعني. فاهمه؟ so عشان كده try not to look for a trick في الحاجات دي. if there is a trick I'll be the first to tell you. يعني I'll be the first to tell you خلاص let's use this, it's much better and faster. خليني اشوف لولو عشان لولو غالبا ما عرفتش. استنى خلاص لولو عشان عارف انت عندك تمرين. هي لولو بس. لا بس هسيب لكم الباقي هوم ورك عشان بس نبقى متفقين. ما اصل عندكم تمرين وعندك مش عارف، لا هتاخدي هوم ورك طبعا. اعمل ايه يعني؟ معلش مش كتير. لا مش كتير مش حاجات فظيعه يعني. بارت 3 و4 صغير 10 كويس. تعالوا نشوف. سوري ارجع تاني معلش اقول هنا ان انا how do I calculate this او try out the answers. ان انا بجرب let's say مثلا هاخد ال 38 دي انا split it into 2. اول 10 hours لوحدهم كده كده هعملهم times 8، هيبقى باقي 28 hours دول هعملهم times 10 واحسب. ده هيطلع لي 80، ده هيطلع لي 280 280 plus 80 كده كده تطلع حاجة كبيرة which is 360. So that's not the answer. هجرب اللي بعدها. برضه هقسمهم 10 times 8 اللي هي كده كده ال 80 اللي في الأول، بعدين هيبقى باقي كده 13 hours. 13 times 10 هيطلع لي 130. 130 plus مش 130 صح؟ 10 hours times 80 130 130 دي تطلع كام؟ 210. ايه ده؟ باقي 23 hours not 80. باقي 23 hours مش 13 hours. 23 times ده يطلع 230. 230 plus 80 تطلع انا مش عارف افكر. 310. اوكي. اول ما اجرب بقى ال 22 هلاقي الموضوع قل عن 270 ف it wouldn't work. يعني هيبقى 80 والباقي هيبقى 12 hours. 12 times 10 هيطلع لي 120. 80 120 دول 200. So that doesn't work. خلاص كده قليل. So the minimum I can reach is this, the 33. So this is if I don't want to write an equation for it. بس أنا شخصيا بجد I always prefer that we should at least be able to always display a specific situation in an equation form, and we should be able to solve it. Let's move to 9. It's because of those questions the reason why I just said we should be able to represent things in equations, because this is a word problem that requires us to put it in equations. And we've been doing this, if you remember last year at the beginning of the year when we were solving linear programming and so on. This is exactly the case. They're saying Marissa needs to hire at least 10 staff members generally. Those 10 staff members should be consisting of juniors and seniors. The juniors will be paid $640 per week, and the seniors will be paid $880 per week. Her budget for paying the staff entirely كلهم على بعض is supposed to be $9,700 per week. That's all of them together, juniors and seniors. She must hire at least 3 juniors. The juniors اللي هم ال J اللي هم let's say I'll give those X or those Y. The juniors اللي هم ال X needs to be at least 3. So it needs to be bigger than or equals to 3. And at least 1 senior. So the seniors اللي هم ال Y needs to be bigger than or equals to 1. I already have هم 2 inequalities out of the 4 that he's looking for. كده كده this means that C is incorrect, D is incorrect. It's either A or B because those are the ones that have the correct inequalities هنا. We now need to figure out what are the other 2 inequalities. If the total is at least 10 staff members, at least 10 staff members. So the X and the Y together, اللي هم ال seniors and the juniors together, should be bigger than or equals to 10 because it's at least 10, which then gives me the second option as the correct one. And definitely this one is incorrect. Does that make sense? Finally, طبعا, if I wanted to calculate the overall amount of money, I'll multiply the dollars by the number of seniors, the dollars for the, sorry, by the number of juniors, and the dollars for the seniors by the number of seniors, and that needs to be less than or equal to 9,700 because the maximum she needs to pay during a week is that, no more than 9,700. Finally, بقى number 10. Number 10 has a new word that I will برضه discuss with you when we start discussing the quadratic equations, which is this word here, roots. There are lots of words that represents the same thing. If I'm talking about any graph whatsoever, the x-intercepts, which are these points, have very have 4 names. They're called x-intercepts, these points. They're also called roots, zeros, and solutions. So all 4 represent the same thing. The roots, the zeros, the solutions, and the x-intercepts are the same thing. They're the points where the graph intersects the x-axis. Okay? Now with the zeros, with the roots, or the x-intercepts, all of them, their y-coordinate is always equals to 0 because any point on the x-axis will always have a y that's equals to 0. طيب, now let's say, and this is for example -2, this is -1, this is 3, and this is 4, and this is 7, for example. So the roots will be written this way. If I asked what are the roots, you're going to write them this way. X equals -2, x equals -1, x equals 3, x equals 4, x equals 7. Those are the roots. طيب, if I wanted to ask you for what are the factors are the roots, بس we put them next to the x with the opposite sign. يعني بدل ما تبقى x equals -2 تبقى x plus 2. بدل x equals -1 تبقى x plus 1. بدل x equals 3 تبقى x minus 3. بدل x equals 4 تبقى x minus 4. دول كده اسمهم factors. بس هم اصلا ايه؟ هم الروتس او الاكس انترسبتس او الزيروز او السولوشنز بس بعكس الساين جنب الاكس. Does that make sense? Are we good? طيب, he gave me the roots. I'm sorry, Lulu. ايه؟ Yes يا حبيبتي. Okay. So again, الاكس intercepts اللي هم الروتس, هم الزيروز, هم السولوشنز. All of them are the points where the graph. Give me a second. All right, sorry. So again, those points right here, the points where the graph intersects with the x-axis, those are what we call roots or solutions or x-intercepts or zeros with their signs as they are. Now, if I asked for the roots or the zeros or so on, these are the roots. X equals -2, x equals 3, x equals 4, x equals 0, x equals 7, sorry. Those are what we call the roots. But if I asked for the factors, what are the factors? The factors are the roots, but with the opposite signs and they're written next to the x. يعني they're x plus 2 with the opposite sign. They're x plus 1 with the opposite sign. بدل -1 plus 1. بدل positive 3 negative 3. بدل positive 4 x equals -4. في كمان واحدة اللي هي x equals x sorry minus 7 كمان. دي اللي فاضلة. عشان دي. Does this make sense? Lulu, is this clear? طيب, so now because he gave me the roots اللي هم -1 وال -3 وال 5, I know that the factors اللي هو بيسأل عليهم they're supposed to be x plus 1, x plus 3, and x plus 5. So which one of those is the option available? It's B. Does this make sense? Sorry. انت صح. -5 بعكس الساين. Does this make sense? اوكي, انت كده فاهمه. طيب, في حاجه عايز بقى اقول بقى عليها. نفس السؤال ده بالظبط جه مره, بس بدل ما يقول لي what are the factors قال لي what is the value of A او what is the value of B مثلا, what is the value of C. So بما ان انا بعرف اجيب الفاكتورز سوري من الروتس, هم دول الفاكتورز اهو. If you multiply الفاكتورز دي by بعض, it should give you the equation اللي فوق. يعني if I multiplied x times x و x times 3, 1 times x, 1 times 3, واللي يطلع كمان اعمله times ده, الانسر اللي هتطلع هيبقى بالشكل اللي فوق ده. هيبقى بنفس المنظر ده كده, x باور حاجه فيها x باور 3, حاجه فيها x باور 2, حاجه فيها x باور 1, حاجه ما فيهاش x. ساعتها هعرف ايه هم الفاليو اوف a و b و c. Does that make sense شويه ولا لا؟ Thank you. That's it for today عشان انا عارف ان بس انا عشان خاطري this is a must. Parts 3 و 4 they have to be a homework. That's the least يعني we can do.